All right, this is our first episode, inaugural. We came up with the idea of doing this show. What was it, Keenan? About 15 seconds ago.
Oh, hold on. Let me turn my camera off. Okay, there you go. Now,
There we go.
now we're good.
That's
No,
that's the look we wanted. That's the Keenan look. No, we came up with the idea of doing this show about 15, 20 seconds ago. The purpose of this, we're going to call it a podcast, although to me, podcast still sounds like audio, is to chronicle the beginnings of the Garage Rocketeers. So, with us now, we have Mr. Pretto, John Pretto. He's our flight director. Keenan Campbell. We have Keenan here. Keenan, what title are we giving you, Keenan? Keenan?
director of operations.
Operations. And we have slash, we're not sure what we call him yet.
Colt. Colt.
Just do another take. Just do another take with that, and we'll edit it. We'll fix it in post.
Okay, and that's the voice of Jonas Dautel, and he's the one that talks in German in his sleep, mainly because he's German when he sleeps. And then we have our security officer. We're not going to even give him a name. We might call him Colt Remington. What was the name we came up with? Colt Remington
Steele.
Winchester the third.
Winchester the third, but he likes to go by Glock. And my name is Chris Fenwick, and I'm not sure what title we're going to give me, but that doesn't matter right now. So, John, let's talk Garage Rocketeers. What is the origin of the idea of Garage Rocketeers?
So we have a journey. We're on a journey, and we want to do a space shot because very few people have done a shot to the Kármán line. So we have an interim project, and we created a brand for.
Okay, hold on. Let's make this accessible for the non-rocket nerds. You said space shot. I assume that means you're trying to get something to space. And describe the Kármán line. What is the Kármán line?
So the Kármán line is 100 kilometers from the Earth, and that's the line that they consider space.
100 kilometers. That's like what, 750 million miles or something? How much is 100 kilometers?
It's, I think, 62 miles.
Yeah, I think you're right. Okay, so you're trying to get a rocket into what is commonly referred to or defined as space, and that's above the Kármán line, right?
That's correct.
How hard is that?
It's very hard. The rocket will go 3.5 Mach, and at that point, things start to melt. So traditional materials that you use in rocketry start to melt because of the speed and the heat on the rocket. So we need titanium, which is exactly like the SR-71. Titanium nose cone, so the nose cone doesn't melt on its ascension.
So at what point does, say, and I happen to know this because we've been messing around with rockets. I've been joining you on this journey for like the last year. At what point, and I know that you've made previous rockets out of fiberglass. At what point does fiberglass deteriorate, come apart?
I don't know. Good question. I would imagine at a couple hundred degrees, which happens on the ascent on the nose cone. The air pressure on the nose cone causes heat, and if it was made out of fiberglass, it would melt the nose cone.
And you mentioned the SR-71. Do we know how fast the SR-71 was?
The SR-71, I did Mach 3, in between Mach 3 and Mach 4. I have to look it up.
So you're talking about building a rocket that will rival the speed of one of the fastest spy planes ever made.
That's right.
Okay, so let's talk logistically. Keenan, why don't we just run out to the hardware store and buy a bunch of stuff and do this? Explain the process to make this happen.
Well, we could go out to the hardware store and make this happen, but fiberglass melts at 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So definitely when we hit max Q, it's more than 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit on the end of the rocket. Hardware store components, while some are used, generally aren't specifically available for rocket construction. So titanium is an exotic metal, so it's not something that you just go to Home Depot and pick up or buy. So we'll have to source that and have it manufactured.
Okay, so let's talk about just John. Now I cut you off because I wanted to get some of that background. You mentioned an interim project. Let's talk about the interim project before the space launch.
Good. Thank you, Chris. So when I was 8 or 7 years old, my dad bought me a rocket called the Nova Payloader. And the interesting thing about this rocket back in the 60s, during the space race, so the space race was going on and we were all excited about rockets. We were seeing all the Mercuries in the 50s and then the early 60s, and then Apollo was the next level of rockets, Saturn V, etc. And so we did the small Estes rockets in the 60s as a child. And my dad bought me this rocket that's 21 inches tall, but it has a clear payload section on the top. And in the directions it says, yeah, go ahead and put ants and cockroaches in there and fly them 1,000 feet in the air. And I clearly remember to this day, 55 years later, capturing ants to take to the desert where my dad used to take us to launch rockets. And I put, I don't know, say 10 ants in this clear section. They all survived, no problem. They probably had the time of their life, right? And so I thought I flew a rocket called Vidrock, which was the first live amateur rocket live streamed in 2001, 21 years ago today. And then I thought to myself, it would be super cool if we could do the payloader and have a camera for 360-degree view as the rocket went up. And so that's the premise of this interim rocket is we took this Nova payloader and we decided to 12XL it. And so from 21 inches to 22 feet with a giant clear section of 12-inch diameter with multiple cameras inside this clear section to do a 360-degree camera and at least one or maybe two cameras downward facing, all transmitted down to do a live broadcast of that view. And so it's a super exciting project. And that is the interim project to get us to the space shot, which is very expensive. And we need corporate sponsorship to make that happen.
So I understand that doing this, and you're talking about a lot of technology, and I'm assuming that there's a certain amount of custom custom stuff that has to happen, possibly some custom software. And I know that Jonas is a programmer. Jonas, what do you see your part in making this this interim project happen?
I think it's similar to how we build it with physical components. We have a couple of standardized components like the clear tube that's going to be melted into the body and connected. And similar to that, we're going to need to build some connectors to connect the different software projects. Like we'll have some sensors that gets us the data on how high the rocket flies, so we know where it is. We'll get some GPS. Ideally, we will have a way of transmitting that to us, and that's gonna be my job to take all the parts, put them together, and make sure that the bit that the sensor detects, if it is like height, velocity, or GPS coordinates, at the end, not only comes to us in the mission control room, but also goes out to our viewer in a way that explains the story better to help tell the story with the data that we have and back up that we don't just film an empty sky and that there definitely is a rocket up there somewhere.
Yeah, I've seen enough now in the last year of these rocket launches that I fully understand there's this tilt up, like when the rocket goes, and all of a sudden you're looking at a bunch of clouds. It's like, I'm not sure where this thing went. So I want to talk to the security officer here for a little bit, and I'm going to let you introduce yourself as you wish to be introduced. What kind of secure issues do we have? Because we're not just launching a rocket. Is that correct?
Well, we're also launching a bunch of camera gear, a bunch of expensive equipment. So, yeah. I don't anticipate us having too many security issues on the rocket itself, but we're bringing a ton of people together with a lot of very expensive equipment. And, one of the things we've talked about is having a relay station that helps have internet and pushing the data up. We've got to have all of that equipment has to be secured. We've got to make sure that we've got, eyes on it. We'll have camera systems so that we can monitor our camera systems. It's a little crazy, right? But we're going to make sure we keep everything kept track of. We've got a bunch of people who are bringing their own personal equipment or their company's equipment to invest into this. And so we're going to make sure that, when people log out at the end of the night and they go back to the hotel, well, the gear's still on site. Because once we do setup, we don't want to move things. We don't want to have to reset up again. So we want to make sure that the area is secure, that there's nothing going on. Obviously, we'll have security on site, physical presence, and then we'll have cameras set up with the more expensive gear so that we can keep an eye on that.
So it's really more securing our camp. We just want to make sure that, maybe not so much nefarious things, but just, I don't know, maybe just stupid things. We just want to make sure everybody has a good time, and we need to have somebody kind of overseeing that, maybe almost like a bit of a parental presence on site. So where is the actual location, Keenan, that we're going to do this interim launch from?
So currently we're going to be about 15 miles south of downtown Las Vegas, off of the Las Vegas Boulevard in the small town, if you can call it a town, of Jean, Nevada. It's a Playas lake bed. We've used it for previous launches. It worked very well. It is remote, so it mitigates some of the issues that could happen with an unexplained event or a negative event with the rocket. There's no populous areas, so it's been a really solid solution. But with all the benefits it provides for the safety, the infrastructure is not there. So we'll currently have to have our own generator plant, our own housing, food or craft services have to be brought in. Internet has to be brought in, either wireless or with our Starlink partner. So that it definitely brings a challenge, but it's the perfect location because it is a dry lake bed. So we've used it in the past.
And that's why, I think.
Okay. So it looks like go ahead.
Well, I just think, we've got to maintain that secure footprint, because last year during the event we had ATVs driving across the flight line, and so we really want to just make sure that we're out there, we're covering the gear and doing all of that stuff. But yeah, go on.
Cool. Well, John, is there any other things that you
So I've been in the hobby for 50 plus years. Grew up during the glory days of the Apollo mission, and then thought, if guys in their garage could build a rocket to go to space, how cool would that be? With Chris's router and my Dremel tool, Keenan's Jeep. We're not billionaires like Elon Musk, but we have the know-how, and we believe we can pull it off.
And that's one of the things
Cool.
that's really cool about it, right? We're all in different places, but we're still working on these projects together. We come together, physically we'll launch from one location, but we're all doing all of this planning all over the world. The last launch was the first time many of us had ever met in person.
Yeah.
And we've still got some international partners that we'll get to meet in person for this next launch, Jonas.
I really look forward to that part.
I think Jonas is a AI generated computer. I don't think he's a real person. He's too smart to be a real person.
Yeah, we couldn't get the robot that looks like me done for the last launch, so we had to delay till this one. But we'll get the AI robot human ready for this one.
Jonas is generated in Unreal Engine and AI. He's like the computer on 2001 Space Odyssey, HAL.
But with a physical body. All right, well, let's wrap this up. We will be back. We're going to do this at least once a month. Probably we should really just like once a week. And when we come back next week, we'll outline some of the base level planning that has gone on, and maybe look at some timelines and how this is all going to come together. But the purpose of this is to give a behind the scenes look at the rawest part of this journey, and that is why we like to call this Garage Rocketeers. So we'll be back next week with more info about the big launch. Thanks for listening.